Joining me now is John Bolton. He's the former national security advisor to Donald Trump. He was also the former United States ambassador to the United Nations, and he's also an author. Ambassador Bolton, thanks so much for being with us. It's a real pleasure to have you on our program, given the timing. I have to ask you out of the gate if you want to make a prediction as to what is going to happen tomorrow.
No, I don't think anybody knows. I mean, assuming the numbers are correct, which could be a heroic assumption in and of itself, it clearly shows an election that's too close to call. A lot will depend on the turnout. Nearly half of the expected turnout have already voted, early voting. So those votes are locked in. But honestly, I don't think anybody can give you a serious prediction. The data are just too inconclusive and contradictory at this stage.
A couple of days ago, Donald Trump at one of his rallies talked about you. He called you a maniac, an idiot. On a few occasions, he's called you a nut job. How do you react when you hear someone that you work with so closely, your boss, say things like that about you?
Well, I think taken in the context of the way he addresses anybody who disagrees with him, it's an indication of the sort of juvenile level at which he approaches the job. He doesn't have a philosophy. He doesn't deal with policy in the sense that we normally describe what happens in government. It's all about Donald Trump. And if you agree with him, that's fine. If you don't agree with him, that's not fine. And it becomes very personal. So I think it's part of the reason, not the only reason, but certainly part of the reason American politics these days is so divisive and so bitter. It's just the way Trump reacts. And you can see in the remarks he's made in the past couple of days about a variety of people that's how he looks at things. And unfortunately, that's what some of his supporters, I think, want to hear.
And when you watch him and you listen to the words that he uses, and lately it seems that he is even outdoing himself. What do you think of his mental cognition? I mean, compared to the person that you work so closely with, do you think that there has been some decline in the former president?
Well, this may come as a shock, but the way he's behaving today publicly is the way he behaved in the Oval Office when there were just a few of us in there with him. He had more inhibitions maybe 8 years ago than he does now. And certainly some of the profanity and the potty-mouthed approach that he takes fully on display now, but it's still not quite what it was when we were alone in the Oval Office or in another place. And I think now people just see basically what I and obviously everybody else who worked for him closely saw all the time. I think this is part of the demonstration why he's not fit to be president. It's not a personality problem. It's a lack of character and a lack of capability.
You have stated publicly that you believe he will declare victory. What would that mean, and what would that look like?
Well, I think it will be, in that sense, a repeat of what he did in 2016. I think in the swing states, the battleground states in particular, they're much more ready for that than they were before. In the states where there are Republican governors, which aren't too many of them, but even where there are Democratic governors, I think a lot of this is they can foresee now what they're going to have to go through, and people are obviously concerned about it. This is not the normal way in American politics. Trump just can't acknowledge he's losing, and if he does lose, it's obvious that somebody stole it from him. That's the Trump mentality. It's always all about him. But I just point out to everybody that in 2020, when he did this, he was sitting in the Oval Office. He was the most powerful man in the world, and he couldn't steal the election. Today, he'll be sitting by the swimming pool at Mar-a-Lago. I think it's very different. It will be ugly. It will be protracted. It will cause damage to civil society, which often happens with Trump. But I think you have to be realistic about the threat, and we'll see. It'll be testing, but I don't think Trump represents an existential threat to the United States way of life. I just think that's overheated.
Overheated.
Look, he did cause damage to the country in the first term. Some of it's been repaired, some of it still needs to be repaired. But there's a difference between a president being not so great on the one hand and being an existential threat on the other. You can be in the middle and be very bad, but not life threatening.
But are there guardrails around him as there were in the past?
Well, I think there will be fewer in the sense that he will not have people around him who are anything other than totally personally loyal to him as opposed to the Constitution. But remember, the reason a system of separated powers was created by our framers was to make sure that to do what was humanly possible anyway, to make sure that no one could take complete control. The judiciary remains independent. Congress will be pretty closely divided between the two parties, yeah. And we'll see what happens.
Trump has tried to distance himself from Project 2025, but do you believe him? Do you think that this is his roadmap for the future of the United States?
I'll bet a small amount of money on this proposition. He doesn't have the faintest idea what's in Project 2025 and doesn't care because it's not about Donald Trump. What he will do on any given day is what he thinks advantages Donald Trump. That's what not having a philosophy means, not doing policy. People will push things at him, but he'll look at it through the prism of how does this benefit me? He hasn't read Project 2025, and if he's elected, he won't.
Have you voted?
I have not. I believe in voting on Election Day. I'm going to vote tomorrow in person.
And have you decided who you're going to vote for?
Well, I'm not going to vote for Trump or Harris because I don't think either one of them are fit to be president. I'm going to write in the name of a conservative Republican, which is what you can do in Maryland, where I live. I haven't yet. I voted for Dick Cheney in 2020, but since Dick is now going to vote for Kamala Harris, I think I need to find somebody else to vote for, and I'll decide before tomorrow.
Isn't that a waste, though, of your democratic right?
I live in Maryland. The polls show Biden will carry Maryland by a margin of 33 points. Sorry, Freudian slip. So my vote really doesn't matter in that sense. I obviously I acknowledge it's a protest vote. I mean, I've been thinking for a while about voting for Ronald Reagan. Why not? He's a real conservative Republican, and maybe there's reincarnation or resurrection. Who can tell?
John Bolton, again, appreciate your time with us. John is the former national security advisor to Donald Trump. Ambassador Bolton, appreciate your thoughts being shared with us this morning. CTV News Channel will have special coverage on election night, led by our chief anchor and senior editor, Omar Sachedina, beginning at 7 o'clock Eastern Time.